My fiancé announced, "I'm still married, BTW. Never got divorced." I said, "Interesting." Then I called her husband. His alimony lawyer was very interested in her hidden assets. I, 36 male, suppose the best place to start is with the scent of buttercream frosting. 3 months ago, I was sitting in a comically small chair in a boutique bakery, watching my fiancée, Chloe, 34, debate the merits of vanilla bean versus Swiss meringue. We were 9 months into planning a wedding that was rapidly approaching the cost of a small country's GDP. Life was, by all accounts, perfect. I'm a senior risk analyst for a large investment bank, and she ran what I thought was a charming, if not overly profitable, online home decor business. We had been together for 3 years, a whirlwind romance built on what I believed was a foundation of honesty and shared ambition. She was charismatic, beautiful, and driven. I was the stable, logical counterweight to her creative energy. It worked. Or so I thought. "Babe, can you pass the water?" she asked, dabbing a bit of frosting from her lip. "Oh, and speaking of logistics and paperwork and all that boring stuff, there's a tiny little thing we need to sort out before the wedding." I pushed the glass towards her, assuming she was talking about the prenup, which my lawyer was finalizing. "What's up?" She took a sip, then looked at me with a breezy, unconcerned smile that I now recognize as the mask of a pathological liar. "So, funny story. I'm still married. BTW." The sentence was delivered with the same casual inflection as if she'd announced she forgot to buy milk. The clatter of forks and light chatter in the bakery faded into a dull roar in my ears. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. "You're what?" I managed to say, my own voice sounding distant. "Married?" she chirped, as if it were a delightful little quirk. "Technically, it's just a piece of paper, Mark. Ben, my ex, well, my husband, I guess, and I have been separated for ages, like 5 years. The divorce is just dragging on because he's being a total leech." My mind, trained to identify and assess risk, went into overdrive. Red flags weren't just being raised, they were being launched into orbit. "A leech? How?" I asked, keeping my voice dangerously calm. It's so tedious," she sighed, waving her hand dismissively. "He thinks I owe him alimony. Me? Can you believe it? So I've been paying him a bit, just to keep the peace while the lawyers handle it. It's almost done, I just need to finalize the last bit. Which actually, I was hoping you could help with. The legal fees are just a bit steep right now." So that was it. The confession was a prelude to a withdrawal. She hadn't revealed a life-altering secret out of a sense of honesty. She'd hit a financial roadblock in her deception and needed my capital to clear it. I leaned forward. "Interesting," I said. The word came out cold, clipped. It was the word I used at work when a junior analyst presented a flawed model, just before I systematically dismantled it. She didn't notice the shift. "I knew you'd understand. You're so logical about these things." "What's his full name?" I asked. Benjamin Carter," she said. "Why?" "Just curious about the man who's been a legal ghost in our relationship for 3 years," I said, offering a tight, false smile. "Tell me more about this alimony. I thought you told me your family was the one with the money struggles, not his." Her story had always been that she was the self-made woman who had escaped a family that made poor financial decisions. This new narrative didn't fit. She stammered, backtracking, weaving a new thread of nonsense about his parents cutting him off. The lies were getting sloppier. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my home office, the glow of my monitor painting the room in shades of blue and betrayal. As a risk analyst, I have access to databases and public record search engines that most people don't. It took me less than an hour to find the divorce case of Chloe Thompson versus Benjamin Carter in the county court docket. It wasn't an amicable split that was dragging on. It was a full-blown legal war. The case had been stalled for 18 months. I read through the motions filed by Ben's lawyer. They were arguing that Chloe was fraudulently concealing income and assets to avoid a larger alimony payout and a fair division of property. They claimed she was operating a cash-heavy business and funneling the profits into an entity they couldn't trace. And then I saw it. The business they were looking for. They didn't have a name for it, just a suspicion. But I did. The Gilded Sparrow, her charming little online home decor store. She'd always told me it was just a hobby, that it barely broke even. She kept it in a separate bank account, under an LLC registered in her maiden name, To keep things clean for tax purposes, she'd said. I had never pried, respecting what I thought was her budding entrepreneurship. I did some more digging. Using some market analysis tools I use for work, I estimated the sales volume of her store based on web traffic, social media engagement, and product turnover. It wasn't a hobby, it was a cash cow. My conservative estimate put her annual undeclared income at well over $200,000. She wasn't a struggling divorcee. She was a financial predator, bleeding her husband dry in court while building a secret nest egg. And I was her next mark. The plan was obvious. Finalize the divorce on the cheap by feigning poverty, then marry me and merge her hidden assets with my legitimate high-earning portfolio, washing them clean of their fraudulent origins. My blood ran ice cold. I wasn't just a fiancé, I was the exit strategy. I found the name of Ben's lawyer on the court filings, a Mr. David Chen. I found his office number. My hand was steady as I picked up my phone. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't just going to end our engagement. I was going to burn her entire fraudulent empire to the ground. Update 1. The phone call to David Chen was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. I introduced myself calmly and factually. Mr. Chen, my name is Mark Knight. I believe you represent Benjamin Carter in his divorce from my fiancée, Chloe Thompson. There was a cautious silence on the other end. That's correct. How can I help you? I have reason to believe your case regarding Miss Thompson's concealment of assets is substantially correct, I said, my voice level. She informed me of her marital status 2 days ago, and I have since uncovered a significant discrepancy in her declared income. I am calling to provide you with the information you've been looking for. The silence that followed was different. It was the sound of a lawyer who had just been handed a royal flush. He asked me to come to his office the next day. I spent the rest of that night compiling a dossier. I gathered every piece of information I had legal and legitimate access to. Texts from Chloe bragging about a huge sale from the Gilded Sparrow. Photos of her at trade shows I now realized were for sourcing inventory. I even found a draft business plan she'd foolishly saved on our shared home network drive, projecting future earnings that were far from hobby level. I printed out my own market analysis of her business. It was a neat, professional package of absolute devastation. When I met David Chen, he was a sharp, no-nonsense man who had clearly been fighting an uphill battle. As he looked through my file, his eyes widened. He kept muttering, "I knew it. I knew it." He asked me why I was doing this. "Because your client is being defrauded," I said. And I was about to become an unwitting accomplice to that fraud. I am a risk analyst, Mr. Chen. I mitigate risk. And Chloe is a walking, talking, catastrophic risk. Armed with my information, Chen filed an emergency motion with the court to compel discovery, specifically targeting the Gilded Sparrow LLC. Meanwhile, I had to deal with Chloe. She was completely oblivious, floating on a cloud of wedding plans and entitlement. She'd occasionally ask if I'd thought about helping with those legal fees, and I'd give non-committal answers. The confrontation came the following Friday. I sat her down in our living room, the same room she'd helped decorate with items from her hobby business. "Chloe, the wedding is off," I said with no preamble. She stared at me, blinking. "Is this because of the marriage thing?" "Mark, I told you it's just a piece of paper. Don't be so dramatic." "It's not because you're married, Chloe. It's because you are a liar," I said, my voice flat. "You lied about your marriage, you lied about your finances, and you lied about your business. You lied about who you are." The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" "My business. The Gilded Sparrow," I said. "The one that barely breaks even. Or should I say, the one that nets you over $200,000 a year while you cry poverty in court and demand alimony from your husband." The mask of carefree charm dissolved, revealing the raw, panicked face of a cornered animal. "You went through my things? You spied on me? That's illegal. I didn't have to spy, Chloe." "You're sloppy. You left a trail of breadcrumbs a mile wide, and now a man named David Chen is following it." The mention of her husband's lawyer's name was the final blow. She understood immediately. The blood drained from her face. This wasn't just a breakup, it was a detonation. You talked to him?" she whispered, horrified. "I did," I confirmed. "I turned over everything. I wish Ben Carter the best of luck in his divorce proceedings. Now I want you out of my house." I'll have your things put in storage." She exploded. A torrent of rage, tears, and accusations followed. I was a monster, a traitor, a psychopath. How could I ruin her life over a simple mistake? The sheer breathtaking entitlement of it all was almost impressive. She genuinely believed her complex multi-year fraud was a simple mistake, and that I was the villain for exposing it. I didn't argue. I just stood there until she ran out of steam, then quietly repeated, "You need to leave now." Update 2. The subpoena for the Gilded Sparrow's financial records was the legal equivalent of a tactical nuke. Chloe and her lawyer tried to fight it, claiming it was an unrelated entity and a violation of privacy. The judge, presented with the evidence from my dossier, disagreed. The records were turned over. The numbers were even worse than my estimates. Over the past 4 years, Chloe had funneled nearly $1 million through the business, all while submitting court declarations that her only income was a small freelance stipend. She had been living a double life, financially and personally. With her fraud laid bare, Chloe's world began to unravel with astonishing speed. Her divorce lawyer, facing potential sanctions for suborning perjury, dropped her as a client. The new, cheaper lawyer she had to hire had an impossible task. Her focus then shifted to making my life miserable. She launched a smear campaign among our mutual friends, painting me as a controlling, paranoid monster who concocted a bizarre conspiracy theory to get out of the wedding. A few of her closest friends bought it, but most people saw through it, especially when the reality of her legal situation began to surface. The most stressful part was extricating myself from the wedding. I spent weeks on the phone with vendors, canceling contracts and forfeiting deposits. It was a costly and humiliating process. Every call was a reminder of the life I had almost been duped to. I sold the engagement ring, a custom piece worth close to $50,000, and put the money aside to cover the losses. One evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Ben Carter. My lawyer gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I wanted to thank you, and maybe buy you a drink if you're open to it." I was hesitant, but I agreed. We met at a quiet bar downtown. Ben was nothing like the leech Chloe had described. He was a quiet, decent high school history teacher who had been utterly destroyed by her. He told me how she had systematically drained their joint accounts when they separated, then played the victim in court so effectively that the judge had ordered him to pay her temporary support based on their prior lifestyle, which he was struggling to afford on his teacher's salary. He had been on the verge of giving up, of agreeing to her ridiculous terms just to make it all stop. My phone call had been a lifeline. "You didn't just save me from financial ruin," he said, looking at me with sincere gratitude. "You saved my sanity. I was starting to think I was the crazy one." We talked for 2 hours, sharing stories about Chloe's lies and manipulations. It was like we were survivors of the same natural disaster. Talking to him was the final piece of validation I needed. Exposing Chloe wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of justice. Final update. The end came as I knew it would, not in a fiery trial but in a quiet, devastating legal surrender. Faced with undeniable evidence of perjury and felony-level financial fraud, Chloe had no choice but to settle, and the settlement was a masterpiece of karmic retribution. David Chen, a true artist in his field, structured the agreement to be airtight. Asset division. The court declared the Gilded Sparrow to be a 100% marital asset. The judge, incensed by the long-term fraud, awarded Ben 75% of the business's total value and all its existing assets. Chloe was left with a minority share of a company she now had to co-own with the man she tried to ruin. Alimony and restitution. Her alimony claim was, of course, dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, the judge ordered her to repay every single dollar of temporary alimony Ben had paid her over the past 2 years. With interest. Legal fees. This was Chen's pièce de résistance. As a punitive measure for the fraudulent conduct that had prolonged the litigation, the judge ordered Chloe to pay for 100% of Ben's legal fees for the entire duration of the divorce proceedings. The final tally was catastrophic for her. After the division of assets and the repayment of alimony and legal fees, Chloe walked away with virtually nothing. Her secret, $1 million nest egg was gone. She was financially ruined, saddled with debt and a court judgment that would follow her for years. I heard through a former mutual friend that she had to sell her car, move out of her trendy apartment, and is now living with her sister. The Gilded Sparrow was eventually dissolved, its assets liquidated to pay the judgment. Ben, on the other hand, is thriving. He used the settlement money to pay off his debts, buy a modest house, and is now planning a trip to Europe to visit the historical sites he teaches his students about. He sent me an absurdly expensive bottle of single malt scotch with a simple note, "To new beginnings, thank you." As for me, the past year has been a process of rebuilding. Canceling the wedding and weathering the social fallout was difficult, but every day I feel a growing sense of profound relief. I dodged a cannonball I never even saw coming. Chloe tried to contact me once, a few months ago. A long, rambling email full of tearful apologies and claims that she had made a mistake and learned her lesson. She even had the audacity to ask if we could talk. I didn't reply. I just created a new email filter and blocked her number. My revenge wasn't loud or emotional. It was a quiet, logical, and decisive phone call. I simply took the information she so arrogantly gave me and handed it to the one person who could use it to hold her accountable. She thought she was playing chess, but she didn't realize she was playing against two opponents who now saw the whole board. She didn't just lose the game, she lost all her pieces. And the best part? She did it to herself.